The storm rolled in fast, smothering the countryside in sheets of black rain. Wind howled through the eaves of the old farmhouse, rattling the shutters like fists on locked doors. Emma sat on the edge of her grandmother's bed, listening to the familiar creaks of the house. Every corner seemed to groan under the storm's weight, and she reminded herself, again, that the noises were only wood, wind, and weather. Nothing more. Still, she couldn't shake her grandmother's words. They echoed in her mind the way thunder rolled through the sky. If you hear it in the night, don't scream. Screaming only makes it worse. She had always brushed it off as one of those eerie old warnings adults like to pass down, like telling children not to whistle at night or not to look in mirrors too long. But now, with her grandmother in the hospital and Emma alone in this sprawling, drafty house, the phrase clung to her like damp clothes. The lights flickered once, then cut out completely. The hum of electricity vanished, leaving only the storm's fury and the wild beat of Emma's heart. She found a candle and struck a match, watching the flame bloom. The little circle of light felt pitiful in the dark, but at least it was something. That's when she heard it. A faint tap. At first, she thought it was the rain against the glass, but the rhythm was wrong. Too slow, too deliberate. Tap, 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 like knuckles rapping inside the walls. Her breath caught. She strained to listen. The sound traced the room, moving from the far corner to the baseboards, as if following her heartbeat. Emma swallowed hard. It's just the pipes, she whispered to herself. Old house. Pipes shift. But then came the whisper. Emma. Her name, stretched and broken, as though dragged across dry lips. The voice seemed to slither from the shadows, shifting places, first above, then by the door, then beneath her bed. Every instinct screamed at her to cry out, but the warning was a steel trap in her mind. Don't scream. Screaming only makes it worse. The candlelight flickered as if in response. She curled her knees to her chest, holding them tight, the wooden bed frame cold against her back. The whisper came again, closer, hotter. Emma. Her eyes darted downward. The space under the bed yawned in blackness, swallowing the candle's glow. Something shifted there, just slightly, a scrape of fabric against the floorboards. Then, a breath, hot and damp against her ankle, as though something crouched beneath her, too close, too real. Emma jerked her feet up, heart thundering so violently she thought it might burst. Her throat tightened, desperate to release a scream. But she bit down, hard enough to taste blood, forcing silence. The house fell still. The only sound was rain hammering against the roof. Seconds ticked by like hours. Emma thought, just for a moment, that maybe she had imagined it. Then came the knock. Not from the door. From the wardrobe. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, deliberate, hollow. Emma's body shook. She clutched the candle tighter, flame trembling. She wanted to run, to fling the door open and sprint into the rain, but her legs wouldn't move. She wanted to scream, but she remembered the warning. Another knock, harder this time. The wardrobe rattled, its door creaking open just an inch. Her breath hitched. In the tiny gap, a pale hand curled around the wood. The fingers were long, too long, knuckles cracked and bent. The nails scraped as they slid down the doorframe. Emma, the voice groaned again, from everywhere at once. Her silence broke. A strangled, desperate scream tore from her throat, sharp enough to split the storm. And the house reacted. The candle blew out instantly, plunging the room into suffocating black. The whisper multiplied, dozens of voices now, shrieking, chanting, laughing. The bed frame rattled violently as if something clawed at it from below. The walls throbbed with pounding, fists slamming in unison. Emma scrambled backward, hitting the headboard. She could feel them closing in, their breath on her face, icy fingers brushing her arms though nothing visible was there. She tried to scream again, but the sound caught in her throat. The voices drowned her, rising to a feverish pitch until they were no longer words but a cacophony of agony. Then, just as suddenly, silence. The candle relit itself. Its tiny flame glowed steady, showing the room exactly as it had been. The wardrobe door was shut. The floorboards were bare, but carved into the wood of the headboard, right where her hands had been pressed, were 4 words, Emma didn't sleep that night. She sat in the corner of the room until dawn, the candle's last stub hissing in its own wax. Every few minutes she would glance at the wardrobe, waiting for the door to creak open again. It never did, but the carved message on her headboard burned in her vision like a scar, "You made it worse." By morning, she convinced herself it had to be exhaustion mixed with fear. Maybe she had been dreaming with her eyes open. Maybe the carving was older than she thought. Anything was better than the truth, that she had heard voices that weren't hers and seen hands where no one stood. She left the farmhouse that afternoon, driving into town to distract herself. Stores, people, sunlight, all of it felt unreal, as though she was watching life through a thin sheet of glass. Even laughter sounded hollow. By the time she returned that evening, the storm clouds had gathered again. The sky darkened faster than it should have, smothering the horizon in bruised purple. Emma's chest tightened. She thought of her grandmother in the hospital bed, her frail hand gripping Emma's wrist the night before she left. Remember, child, don't scream. Whatever you do, don't scream. The warning had felt like nonsense back then. Now, it was an iron weight. She ate a quick dinner and tried to settle in the living room, television on for comfort. The farmhouse seemed quieter than usual, the ticking of the clock sharp, almost accusatory. That's when she heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. The sound came from the kitchen this time. Emma stiffened, the remote clattering to the floor. She held her breath, ears straining. The tapping grew louder, closer, moving along the walls with slow precision. She grabbed her phone with trembling hands and dialed her grandmother's number, praying she would answer. After a few rings, the weak voice finally came through. Emma. Her throat nearly closed with relief. Grandma, it's happening. The sounds. The voice. Last night I screamed, and. Her grandmother cut her off, voice suddenly urgent. Oh, Emma, no. You fed it. What does that mean? You made it stronger. Screaming tells it you're afraid. It grows with your fear. You must stay silent no matter what you see, no matter what you hear. If it thinks you're brave, it loses interest. Emma pressed a shaking hand to her forehead. I can't, Grandma, it's right here. I can hear it moving. Her grandmother coughed, the sound ragged. Then leave the house. Tonight. Don't give it another sound. The call cut out. Static hissed through the phone before it went dead. Emma's stomach dropped. She tried to redial, but her phone showed no service. The tapping had stopped. The silence was worse. She rose slowly from the couch, every muscle tight, and edged toward the front door. The handle was cold under her palm. She yanked it, ready to bolt into the night. But the door didn't budge. Locked. She twisted harder, pulling with both hands. The deadbolt was gone. No keyhole, no latch. Just smooth wood. Panic surged. She spun around. The living room was no longer empty. In the corner where the shadows were thickest, something stood. Its outline was wrong, too tall, shoulders slumped forward, limbs dangling like broken branches. Its face, or where a face should be, was only darkness. Emma's lips parted, instinct begging her to scream. She clamped her hands over her mouth, shaking. The thing moved. It didn't step. It glided, closer with each flicker of the lamp. Its head tilted, as though curious. From the darkness of its face came a sound, not quite a voice but a rasping imitation of one. Cry for me. Emma's body trembled violently, but she kept her mouth sealed. Her grandmother's warning was a drumbeat in her skull. Don't scream. Don't scream. Don't scream. The figure crouched low, its shadow stretching across the floor until it touched her bare feet. A hot, rotten breath rose around her. Just one scream, it coaxed. One, and I'll go. Tears streamed down Emma's cheeks. The silence hurt, her throat burned with the effort of holding it back. Her body wanted release, but her will clung to silence like a lifeline. The figure's head twitched. It leaned so close she could feel its absence pressing against her skin. Then, suddenly, it recoiled. The lamp sputtered out. Darkness. Emma gasped, still silent. Her body quaked, but she hadn't screamed. Not this time. The silence stretched long and deep, until she thought she might faint. Then, from the pitch black, a new whisper bloomed, softer, almost playful. You're learning. And then the sound of footsteps, retreating, fading through the walls until the storm outside was the only noise left. Emma sank to the floor, clutching her knees. Her grandmother had been right. Silence was survival. But the creature wasn't gone. It was waiting. And Emma knew she would have to survive another night in the house that fed on fear. By the third night, Emma hadn't slept at all. Her eyes burned, her body begged for rest, but every time her head dipped, she jolted awake with the thought of that whisper curling into her ear. The farmhouse seemed alive now. Its old bones no longer groaned randomly, they pulsed with intent. Shadows gathered in corners where no light reached. Doors that had always creaked open now closed silently on their own. The house wasn't just haunted. It was hunting. She sat in the kitchen, a flashlight clutched tight, watching the beam tremble with her hands. A single thought churned in her mind, I can't scream again. If I do, it wins. Her grandmother's last words haunted her as much as the entity itself. If it thinks you're brave, it loses interest. But Emma wasn't brave. Not really. She was cracking at the edges. And the thing knew it. The storm outside had worsened. Rain slashed at the windows in furious waves. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the trees like twisted skeletons. With each flash, the kitchen seemed to warp, walls bending, shadows stretching. Then the tapping began again. Not faint, not cautious this time. Loud, aggressive, bang, bang, bang. It came from every wall at once, vibrating the house until dust rained from the ceiling. Emma clamped her jaw shut, her entire body rigid. The flashlight flickered, went out, pitch black. She felt it before she heard it. A weight in the room, pressing down on her lungs, thickening the air. Then came the rasping breath, right beside her ear. Emma. She froze. Her heart pounded so violently she thought it might explode. But she stayed silent. A long pause. Then the voice again, taunting. Why don't you scream? You want to. I can feel it. She bit her lip until it bled. The metallic taste pooled on her tongue. The thing moved closer. The chair across from her. Scraped as if pulled back by invisible hands. Emma felt the air shift, heavy and foul. Do you know what happens if you don't? The voice whispered. If you stay silent forever. Emma couldn't move, couldn't breathe. You become mine anyway. The kitchen lights exploded to life. For an instant, Emma saw it clearly across the table. A shape draped in shadows, skin gray and stretched too thin, mouth a jagged slit that split wide when it spoke. Its eyes were pits of endless black, sucking the light out of the room. Her throat convulsed. A scream clawed its way up. She bit down, shaking, refusing. The thing slammed a hand on the table, cracking the wood. Scream. It shrieked, voice layered with dozens of tones. Give me what I want. Tears streamed down Emma's face, but she remained silent. She pressed her fingernails into her palms until they cut the skin, using the pain as her anchor. The creature leaned so close its breath chilled her skin. Then I'll take it. And the lights went out again. The kitchen vanished. Suddenly Emma was in her bedroom, standing by the bed though she hadn't moved. The wardrobe rattled violently. The carved words on the headboard seemed fresh, bleeding. You made it worse. The bed frame shook. Something crawled underneath, dragging sharp nails along the floorboards. Emma's entire body quaked. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She wouldn't give it what it wanted. The whisper roared all around her now, layered with hundreds of voices. Cry for me. Scream for me. Let me in. The wardrobe burst open. A pale arm shot out, clawed fingers scraping across the floor. Then another. Then the face, gray, grinning, its mouth a void. Emma staggered back until her spine hit the wall. The thing pulled itself out, grotesque and tall, unfolding like a spider. It towered over her, its grin stretching impossibly wide. Last chance, little one. Emma's chest heaved. The scream was right there, trapped inside. But something inside her shifted, an ember of defiance. No, she whispered. The creature's grin faltered. Emma forced herself upright, though her knees shook. You don't get my fear. Not anymore. The house groaned as if in protest. The lights flickered violently. The shadow thing shrieked, the sound stabbing her ears. Emma clenched her fists and said louder, I won't scream. The entity convulsed, its form unraveling. It screeched, 100 voices breaking apart. The walls buckled, the ceiling cracked, but Emma didn't flinch. She squeezed her eyes shut, refusing to give it the satisfaction. And then, silence. When she opened her eyes, the room was empty. The wardrobe was shut. The bed still. The house was just a house again. Emma collapsed to the floor, shaking, sobbing, but silently. She hadn't screamed. And somehow, she knew she had won. But even in her victory, she remembered her grandmother's warning in its truest form. Screaming makes it worse, but silence doesn't make it gone.